Welcome to the McLeod County Historical Society and Museum Spotlight on the Collection. This is hopefully going to become a series that we do from time and time again, and I brought a few items for you guys at home to look at and see, and hopefully maybe entice you to come to the museum. But first I want to talk about where I'm at. I'm here in one of the displays at the McLeod County Historical Museum. And this is our country school display. It is one of several displays. If you haven't been to the museum, we encourage you to come and check it out. But this year, 2015, I know it's almost over, but we still have a little time left, and our theme for the year has been the history of the country schools. So everything country school, and the items that I brought today that I'm going to show you are from country schools and have been donated by folks right here from McLeod County. Now, how do you get to the McLeod County Historical Museum if you haven't been there? Well, we are on the intersection of School Road and Highway 7. Everybody knows where Burger King is, right across from Burger King. So our open hours are Mondays 10 to 4, Thursdays and Fridays 10 to 4, and Saturdays 1 to 4. But let's say that doesn't work for your schedule. Give us a call. Our phone number is 320-587-2109. Let us know a time that works for you, and more than likely we can arrange a time that you can come in and take a tour or use our research library. Oh, and that reminds me, our research library is absolutely wonderful. Are you doing genealogical research? Maybe looking into the history of an organization, a church, something else in the community? More than likely, we have information at our research library that you can use. And our research library is open during our open hours and also, again, by appointment. So give us a call, set it up, and you can come in and explore the museum. Well, like I was saying, the history of country schools. Can you believe that we had over 85 original districts in McLeod County? Yes, and we have a lovely display at the museum besides this one that has a map of McLeod County, and it shows all the district schools, 1 through 85, where they were located originally in the county. Now, when you look at the map, it's like someone took 85 numbers and just threw them on there. There's no rhyme or reason, really, but there is a little bit of reason, and it's how people settled the county. As people would populate a certain area, they would sign a petition, and they would go to their county commissioners and say, hey, we need a school in our area because our kids have to walk too far to the nearest country school. So they would vote, they would pass, and the district would be formed. So District 1, that was in Glencoe. That was the very first district because that was the very first community that was settled in McLeod County. And you can imagine all the way out to District 85. Now, that's a little bit about the history of the country schools. There's much, much more of how these early schools got developed. And if you come to the museum, you can find out more, or you can go to our gift shop. We just put together a lovely history booklet for our year, 170 pages with photos and personal stories highlighting each of the district schools that were rural country schools. So not the town schools, but the rural country schools. So you'll want to check that out. But back to our artifacts. So I brought a few things from the museum. Now, this is an item that everyone would have seen at a country school. It's a little lunch pail. Now, this one was used by the donor, Ray Pavlish. But we also see, must have been used by one of his brothers as well, because there's a little piece of tape here. Someone was laying claim, Dennis Pavlish also used it, and that was pretty typical. They would hand these down. Now, there was no school lunch that was provided for kids, so they had to bring their lunch. This would have been later on, very, very early on in the 1800s. We hear stories about they'd grab a potato, and that would be their lunch for the day. So that potato would get put on the stove, and hopefully by lunchtime, it was nice and warm and cooked, and they could eat it. That was the hot lunch of the day. But now these little lunch pails, they would have been filled with yummy, scrumptious things like Twinkies. No Twinkies. But they would have had things like lard sandwiches, and if you were lucky, an apple. A lard sandwich, yummy. But from what I hear, they loved it, they ate it, and that was good. So Mr. Ray Pavlish was nice enough to donate this piece. And his story that goes along with it is that he attended district school number 51. So we know exactly where that little lunch pail went. And he talks in his recollections of going there about you'd walk in and hang up your coat and there'd be a bench and you'd stick it under there. Otherwise, sometimes if it was really, really cold in the wintertime, you know, it gets a little cold here in Minnesota once in a while. And your lunch could actually freeze if you left it in the coat room. So if you were thinking ahead, you'd bring your lunch pail in, stick it under the stove, so it'd be nice and warm. Otherwise, if you forgot it out there, I don't know if lard sandwiches were good frozen. Maybe it made them better, I don't know. But this little green tin lunch pail was used by Ray Pavlish and taken to District School 51. And on the very top of it, Mr. Pavlish added something else. He put his initials, his mark on there. And you can see that, hopefully right here, his RP. So forever marking, this is his lunch pail. And we love that at the Historical Society. So many items come into the museum, photos, documents, pieces like this. They're very old and they're very unique and sometimes they're very valuable, but they really don't tell us a story. And that's really what we are looking for at the McLeod County Historical Museum. How can the objects that we preserve and collect tell the story of the people and the places of McLeod County's history? And that little lunch pail can tell us so much. I have another item that tells a story. What is this? It's a slate. Now, I love children of today with all their technological gadgets. We do a lot of tours at the museum, and we had one child in particular who said it is the size of an iPad. Yeah, so that's what we call it. This is the iPad of the 1800s. So one of the big reasons why kids used and had slates is because paper was at first rare on the frontier to get supplies of it, and secondly, very costly. And they needed something to practice their spelling, their arithmetic, and their writing on. So the slate became an easy solution. It was handy. You could carry it with you wherever you went. You could practice. You could take it home to do your homework. And it was just something the right size. This one even has a little hole drilled on the top of it, which we find in some of the slates that have been donated at the museum, so they could hang it on a hook when they weren't using it. So I thought that was a very ingenious little addition. And lo and behold, this one also has a little mark that's been left on it. So carved into the wood, I don't know if you can see that there, it's an L and an R. Who is that, or what is that? Well, we're lucky, because the person who brought this in was able to give us the story. And this particular piece was brought in by Laura Karg, is the donor. And the SL actually stands for Lars Rasmussen. So Lars wanted to make sure that someone else didn't take his slate and get it mixed up with his, so he put his initials on there. And this little slate was used at school district number 45. And it was used from 1884 to 1892. The lessons that this slate has seen. And it wasn't done after 1892. It went on to do arithmetic and writing and spelling for Laura Rasmussen, the donor who became Laura Karg. And she used it from 1916 to 1924. So a little cool, unique history there. So it takes an object that's just a slate and it gives it story. It gives it a purpose. Who is it? Who used it? Why did they need it? So that's why these stories are so important. Now, a lot of you might find this familiar. What does that mean? It's time to come in to class from recess. But this little piece, the bell, we don't know anything about it. The information that we have, when you pull it up, says unknown. Unknown donor, unknown history. Now, it's a great prop for us to use to show what they would have been like. But that's about all we can tell about this piece. We don't know where it was used, if it was used in McLeod County. And that's why it's so important to know the story. And I want all of you to think about items like in your own personal collection. Maybe you could add a story and put it with the piece so that it may not be donated to a museum, but at least the people who inherit the piece in your family will know exactly where it came from and why it's important to you. Another big thing is photographs and pictures. Now, I bet a lot of these look familiar. This looks familiar to a lot of people because this is what's called a souvenir. And it amazes me how beautiful these pieces were. There's a picture of the teacher in the center. This particular one was used at District 6, and it was called or known as Riverside School, also known as Kaniska. And we just recently this year added a lovely dedicated sign to mark where District 6 school was. It's now on the Virgil Voigt Wildlife Management area, so I encourage you to check that out. But this little piece was not uncommon to many country schools, where at the end of the year, this little souvenir would be given out. It would list all of the students' names, the pupils who attended, the name of the school, says right there, Riverside School, and in Rich Valley Township, McLeod County, Minnesota. And this one is 1905, 1906, and 1907. And those are probably the years that that teacher taught at that school. Which reminds me, when we were doing our research for our history booklet on the country schools, we found out something very interesting. So I'm looking up teachers, and it never seemed like a teacher stayed more than 2 years at a school. I'm like, why were they losing these teachers? The turnover is just terrible. But doing more research, we found that there was actually a rule for that. A teacher could not teach more than 2 years at a country school. Why on earth would they make this a rule, I thought. So looking further, we found in some of the council meetings, they felt 2 years was just about the right time, and the teacher wouldn't get too comfortable with the children. And they thought that if she got too comfortable, maybe discipline would be a problem. So it was time to move on to another school. Good news is a lot of the teachers rotated back in after a few years, but it made it a little hard to secure teachers for the McLeod County area. And many of the teachers with this 2-year rule, you see them going over to Sibley County, you see them going to Renville County and other neighboring counties. So back to the artifact. The teacher here is Emily Jensen, and the school officers are listed here and each of the pupils' names. Wow, what a huge amount of information on one little artifact. Plus, we have this beautiful historic graphic with a picture of the teacher. And so things like this are tremendously important for when we do our research. Now, you can obviously imagine that all of this information went into our history booklet. So pieces like this, they come with a lot of information, but then also too, some pieces, we need to learn the historical background, and we can only do that through you. Some other fun facts about country schools like this one that I'm standing in. This is hilarious, and when we found the rules for teachers of 1872. So hold on to your hats with this one. Teachers each day will fill lamps and clean chimneys. Thank goodness they don't have to do that today. Rule number 2, each teacher will bring a bucket of water and a shuttle of coal for the day's session. Now, that might have been a rule for the teacher, but many times that job got delegated to students in the class. So not only were the students required to do their reading and writing and arithmetic, but they also had responsibilities such as chores. So someone would have to get that water. More than likely it wasn't the teacher, it was probably a student. All right, number 3, make your pins carefully. You may whittle nibs to the individual taste of each pupil. What? Well, this would have been a time when the pencils would not have been like the pencils that we have today. Remember, this is 1872. This also would have been a job probably for students as well. And we have records showing that each teacher had to budget a certain amount of money for pencils and for paper and different things. And it was very, very tightly watched by the board of the school for that particular district. And so many times they talk about getting their pencils whittled down to just nubs, but they were still using them because they had no more money left in the budget to be extravagant and buy more lead. Number 4, and this is one of my favorites. Men teachers may take 1 evening each week for courting purposes, or 2 evenings a week if they go to church. Now, men could court, but the women teachers could not. So I often wonder, how did anyone get married? They figured it out, apparently. Number 5, after 10 hours in school, the teachers may spend the remaining time reading the Bible or other good books. How nice of them after your 10-hour day. Number 6, women teachers who marry or engage in unseemly conduct will be dismissed immediately. So I often, when I read this, wonder, so marriage and unseemly conduct are kind of the same thing? That seems odd. Now, this is a really strict rule in 1872. As time went on, these rules got laxed tremendously, and a big reason why was because social norms changed, obviously. More women started to work, but also it was much harder to get teachers and to keep teachers. If you can imagine a teacher, as soon as they were engaged, couldn't be a teacher anymore, you would run out of teachers pretty fast. So these rules did change after a while, thank goodness. Number 7, every teacher should lay aside from each pay a goodly sum of his or her earnings for his or her benefit during his or her declining years, so that he or she will not become a burden upon society. Remember, 1872, there's no Social Security, there's no 401k plan, so they are trying to encourage them to save some money so that they won't become a burden on society. Number 8, any teacher who smokes, uses liquor in any form, frequents pool or public halls, or gets shaved in a barbershop will give good reason to suspect his worth, intention, integrity, and honesty. And I don't know if I need to say anything about that. But boy, I didn't know barbershops were so risque back in the day. Which, by the way, we do have a barbershop display at the museum, so come on by anytime and you can check out the barbershop. Number 9, the teacher who performs his labor faithfully and without fault for 5 years will be given an increase of 25 cents per week in his pay, providing the Board of Education approves. Yes, not a lucrative business, this teaching. So those are the rules for teachers of 1872. Always interesting to see how things have changed. And here at the Historical Society, that's what we're all about, is remembering history. And we encourage you, of course, to come to the museum. Check out our website. You can go to www.mcleodhistory.org. One of the great new things that we have on our website is the Browse Our Collection button. It's a big blue button in the middle of the page. You click on that and you can look at over 9,000 images, documents, and objects that we have in our collection at the museum. Really great to check out and just see what you can find about your history. We also encourage you, become a member. Members get to use our research library for free. They get our monthly newsletter. They get to tour the museum whenever they'd like for free, and of course they get invited to all of our wonderful events that we have each year. It's just $25 for an individual membership. Otherwise, for a family, $40. A business is $300, and a lifetime is $500, and you get a special limited edition Martin McLeod Cuba print. So please, if you can, become a member. It's well worth it, and that's how we keep history alive, preserving the past to inspire the future. Thank you. See you next time.